The mountainous landscape of Golden Valley scrolled past the bus window as Emily Parker observed, with a mixture of nostalgia and apprehension, the place she had left 10 years ago. The sun was beginning to set behind the verdant hills of the small town in the Appalachian foothills, painting the sky with orange hues that seemed to welcome her return. After a decade as an international correspondent for a major American newspaper, Emily never imagined she would return under such mysterious circumstances. "Next stop, Golden Valley, Central Terminal," announced the driver over the aging loudspeaker. Emily adjusted her dark curly hair, took a deep breath and adjusted the strap of her backpack on her shoulder. The message she had received 3 days earlier continued to echo in her mind. "Come home, Emily. What your grandfather kept needs protection." He knew this day would come. The message, sent by Father Matthew, her deceased grandfather's old friend, offered no further explanation. Just this enigmatic summons that made her abandon an important journalistic assignment in Rome to return to the United States. The bus stopped with a gentle jolt. Emily descended the metal steps and felt the warm, fragrant air of her hometown envelop her body. Nothing seemed to have changed. The same modest terminal, the same mountains in the background, the same people with easy smiles. "Emily? Emily Parker, I can't believe it." She turned and found Sarah Wilson, her childhood friend, now a mature woman carrying a set of keys in her hands. "Sarah, it's so good to see you." The two embraced with a familiarity that not even a decade of distance had managed to erase. "I came to pick you up. Father Matthew told me you'd arrived today." Sarah took Emily's suitcase. "You look beautiful. Europe has been good to you." Emily smiled, but her eyes revealed concern. "Did Father Matthew say anything about why he called me?" Sarah made a negative gesture with her head as they walked to the parking lot. "He just said it was urgent and related to your grandfather. He's been acting kind of strange in recent weeks, ever since that dog appeared." "Dog? What dog?" Emily stopped abruptly. "A German shepherd that no one knows where it came from. It appeared on the day of the church restoration ceremony a month ago. You know that old church your grandfather helped preserve? They were reopening after renovations, and the dog simply walked in during the ceremony and went straight to the altar, as if it were looking for something." A shiver ran down Emily's spine. The coincidence was too disturbing. "And the strangest thing," continued Sarah as she unlocked the car, "is that it never left. It always stays near the altar, especially close to that ancient ark that your grandfather restored before—" "You know." Emily nodded. Her grandfather, Samuel Parker, had been a renowned restorer of sacred art. His last work had been the restoration of an ancient carved wooden ark that, according to local legend, held documents from the town's founding. "Father, Matthew tried to remove the dog several times, but it always comes back. He eventually gave in. Now the animal even has a name, Guardian." Emily's heart raced. The memory of Rome was still fresh. The German shepherd in St. Peter's Basilica, its eyes fixed on the Pope's coffin, the manuscript mentioning a guardian of truth. "I need to see this dog," said Emily, with a determination that surprised even herself. As the car wound through the narrow streets of Golden Valley, Emily observed the subtle changes in the town. New businesses, renovated houses, but the essence remained the same. When they passed the central square, she couldn't help but notice the imposing Church of the Divine Revelation, with its colonial architecture and towers that seemed to touch the now starry sky. And there, sitting on the church steps like a silent sentinel, was a large, dark-coated German shepherd, its alert eyes fixed on the passing car. "That's him," whispered Sarah. "Guardian." Emily felt a lump in her throat. The animal's gaze, even from a distance, seemed to penetrate her soul as if it recognized her, as if it had been waiting for her. And in that moment, she knew her life would never be the same again. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The next morning brought the familiar aroma of country coffee and the singing of birds that Emily hadn't heard in years. Staying at Sarah's house, she had barely slept, her mind filled with unanswered questions. After a quick breakfast, she headed to the Church of the Divine Revelation, determined to find Father Matthew and the mysterious German shepherd. The church bell was ringing 9 times when Emily climbed the stone steps. The temple was empty, except for a few elderly ladies praying silently in the front pews. Light entered through the colored glass windows, creating a mosaic of colors on the marble floor worn by time. And there, exactly as Sarah had described, was the German shepherd, lying near the altar, its attentive eyes following Emily's every movement. He seems to be waiting for... Sayusti. Emily turned and found Father Matthew, now a man with completely white hair and a face marked by time, but with the same kind eyes she remembered from childhood. Father Matthew, she embraced her grandfather's old friend. What's happening? Why did you call me with such urgency? The priest looked around, checking if they were alone, and then gestured for her to follow him to the sacristy. The German shepherd immediately stood up and accompanied them, as if it were part of that conversation. His name is Guardian, explained the priest as the dog sat beside him. He appeared on the exact day we reopened the church after restoration. At the exact moment I discovered something disturbing. The sacristy was a small room with ancient dark wood cabinets where sacred vestments were kept. Father Matthew closed the door and removed a small golden key from inside his vestments. Your grandfather gave me this before he passed, he showed the key. He said I should only use it when the protector appeared. I thought it was just the delusion of an elderly man until this dog showed up and began to act unusually. Unusual how? Emily asked while observing the animal, which now seemed perfectly calm but attentive to every word. He scratches with his paws at certain points of the altar, always the same places. He howls at night, especially when there's a full moon. And, Father Matthew lowered his voice, he reacts aggressively when Nathan Morgan approaches the restored ark. Nathan Morgan, Emily frowned. The mayor's son. Exactly. He returned a few months ago from Europe, where he was studying history and archaeology. Since then, he's developed a peculiar interest in the ark your grandfather restored. Says he's writing a book about American colonial relics. Father Matthew walked to one of the cabinets, inserted the golden key into an almost imperceptible lock, and revealed a secret compartment. From inside, he removed a worn leather notebook. This is your grandfather's journal. In the last pages, he mentions something about a secret sealed in the ark, something that could only be protected by a chosen guardian. And he mentions you, Emily, says you would be called back when necessary. Emily took the journal with trembling hands. The last notes dated from 2 weeks before her grandfather's passing. The handwriting, normally firm and elegant, showed signs of weakness. The symbol was found. The cycle begins again. The guardian will come when the seal is threatened. Emily needs to know she saw the signs in Rome. Emily felt her blood freeze in her veins. How could her grandfather know about the incident in Rome if he had already passed when it occurred? I don't understand, she murmured. What symbol? What seal? Father Matthew pointed to the dog. He knows. Since Guardian arrived, I've been dreaming of strange symbols, of a language I don't recognize, and I always wake up with the same feeling. Something needs to be protected at all costs. At that moment, they heard footsteps approaching the sacristy. The German shepherd immediately became alert, a low growl forming in its throat. Father Matthew quickly stored the journal and closed the secret compartment. The door opened, revealing a tall man with a sophisticated appearance and a calculated smile. His eyes of a penetrating blue fixed on Emily with a disconcerting intensity. "Forgive my intrusion," said Nathan Morgan, his soft voice contrasting with the tension in the environment. "I didn't know we had a visitor." The German shepherd positioned itself between Nathan and Emily, its posture clearly defensive. "Emily Parker," she introduced herself, extending her hand while trying to disguise her discomfort. "Samuel Parker's granddaughter." Nathan's smile widened. "The famous international journalist, I know all about you." He held her hand for too long. "Your grandfather was a fascinating man. He had interesting secrets, especially about a certain colonial ark." Before Emily could respond, A crash coming from the church interrupted the conversation. The three rushed to the main nave, followed closely by the German shepherd. The central chandelier, an ancient piece of crystal and bronze, had fallen exactly over the altar, more precisely over the ark restored by Samuel Parker. The dust from the fallen chandelier still hung in the air, particles shining against the rays of sunlight entering through the high windows. Emily ran toward the altar, her racing heart mixing concern and a strange premonition. The chandelier had fallen directly on the ark, but upon getting closer, she found something inexplicable. The ancient bronze and crystal piece was completely destroyed, but the carved wooden ark remained intact, without a single scratch. "Impossible," murmured Nathan, approaching cautiously. "A chandelier that size should have shattered the wood." Father Matthew looked at Guardian, who was now sitting beside the ark, as if nothing had happened. The priest's eyes revealed a mixture of fear and reverence. "It's not the first time something like this has happened," he said quietly. "Last week, a leak flooded the church, but not a drop of water touched the ark. It's as if there were an invisible protection." Emily felt an inexplicable impulse and extended her hand to touch the carved surface of the ark. The moment her fingers touched the ancient wood, a sensation of warmth spread through her arm. Simultaneously, Guardian emitted a soft whine, almost as if approving the gesture. "Did you feel that?" asked Emily, quickly withdrawing her hand. Father Matthew nodded. "Your grandfather also mentioned that sensation. He said the ark recognized certain people." Nathan observed the scene with an expression that mixed skepticism and fascination. "Interesting. Very interesting. The psychosomatic phenomenon of ancestry. The mind attributes physical sensations to objects with emotional value." "It wasn't psychosomatic," retorted Emily, irritated by the condescending tone. "It was real." Nathan smiled, that calculated smile that was already beginning to bother her. "Of course. As you would say, perception creates reality, doesn't it? The famous journalist who believes in facts." Before Emily could respond, the church caretaker and 2 volunteers entered, alarmed by the noise. Father Matthew asked them to isolate the area and begin cleaning the debris, ensuring that no one got too close to the ark. "We need to talk in private," whispered the priest to Emily. "Tonight, after everyone leaves. Bring your grandfather's journal." For the rest of the day, Emily immersed herself in the worn pages of Samuel Parker's journal. The oldest notes dealt with common restorations, techniques for preserving wood and pigments. But in the last months of his life, his writings became increasingly enigmatic. The symbols on the ark are connected with those found in Rome. The lineage of guardians remains uninterrupted. The cycle is completed when heaven and earth align. In another passage it read, "What was sealed under the foundation stone must not awaken. The guardian will sense when danger approaches. Emily saw, Emily will know." The mention of Rome continued to disturb Emily. Her grandfather had never mentioned anything about Rome or guardians in their conversations. How could he know about something that would only happen after his departure? When twilight painted the sky of Golden Valley with purple hues, Emily returned to the church. The doors were closed to visitors, while the cleaning team finished collecting the shards from the chandelier. Nathan was there, photographing the ark with a professional camera. "Documentation for my book," he explained, upon noticing Emily's presence. "A relic that survives a 200-pound chandelier is definitely worthy of study." "And what exactly do you think this ark contains?" asked Emily, trying to probe his intentions. Nathan put the camera in his bag. "According to official historical records, just documents from the town's founding. But," he moved closer, lowering his voice, "your grandfather believed in something more. He spoke of a seal and a buried truth. I think he found something during the restoration, something he kept secret." Nathan's tone was no longer one of skepticism, but of genuine curiosity, almost reverence. For a moment, Emily saw in him not the arrogant son of the mayor, but a passionate researcher. "My grandfather took many secrets with him," she responded cautiously. "Not all of them," Nathan smiled. "I'm staying at the Central Inn. If you want to discuss theories about the Ark or just remember old times, I'm at your disposal." After all, we grew up together in this town, didn't we? Emily nodded, vaguely remembering the quiet boy who used to observe her from afar during town festivals. He was a few years older and always seemed to know more than he revealed. After Nathan's departure, Emily found Father Matthew in the sacristy. Guardian was at his side, as always. The religious man seemed agitated, leafing through an old book with leather binding. "I found it," he said without preamble. "The reference your grandfather mentioned. It's in this parish registry book dated 1782. He pointed to a passage in Latin with a handwritten translation beside it. "The object was sealed under the central stone. The guardian will remain vigilant. When the stars align again, the cycle must be renewed, or what sleeps will awaken." "What does that mean?" Emily frowned. "I'm not sure," admitted the priest, "but the drawing beside the inscription is identical to the symbol carved into the bottom of the ark restored by your grandfather." He showed a photograph, a circle with an internal spiral cut by 3 vertical lines. The same symbol was sketched in the last pages of Samuel Parker's journal with an annotation. "The truth sealed under 3 keys. Only the blood. How the guardian can renew the pact." "Blood?" Emily felt a chill. Father Matthew shook his head. "It could be symbolic. But I know your grandfather believed that the ark was just the surface of something much larger, something connected to the foundation, not just of this town, but of a deeper truth." At that moment, Guardian abruptly stood up, his ears alert. A low growl formed in his throat as he fixed his gaze on the sacristy door. Seconds later, they heard footsteps quickly moving away. "Someone was spying on us," whispered Emily. A sudden tremor shook the church, making objects vibrate on the shelves. It wasn't strong enough to cause damage, but enough to alarm. Guardian began to bark, running to the main nave. Following him, Emily and Father Matthew witnessed something that defied any rational explanation. The marble floor around the ark was beginning to crack, slowly forming the same symbol they had just seen in the book and in the journal. The circle with the spiral, cut by 3 lines. Dawn found Emily sitting on the porch of Sarah's house, a cup of coffee cooling between her hands as she observed the first lights of day touching the contours of the mountains of Golden Valley. She hadn't been able to sleep after the events of the previous night. The image of the cracks in the marble floor forming that mysterious symbol wouldn't leave her. Even Father Matthew had requested absolute secrecy about what had happened. "We'll isolate the area. Say it's a structural problem," he had decided. "Meanwhile, we need to discover what's happening." The sound of a car approaching interrupted her thoughts. It was Sarah, returning from her night shift at the local hospital. "You look exhausted," commented her friend, sitting next to Emily. "The town didn't let you sleep." Emily hesitated, uncertain about how much she could share. "Just thinking about my grandfather, about everything he left behind." Sarah nodded understandingly. Samuel was an extraordinary man. He knew things that no one else knew, saw beyond what others could see. She paused, as if assessing whether she should continue. "There were rumors, you know. In the last months before he passed, they said he had found something during the restoration of the ark, something that changed him." "Changed him how?" "He started talking about cycles, about guardians. He began making nocturnal visits to the church alone. And there were those books." "What books?" Emily straightened in her chair, suddenly alert. "Old books. In Latin, some in languages I've never seen before. He kept them in a chest in the attic of your old house. The Parker family home, where Emily had grown up, had been closed since her grandfather's passing. She hadn't even considered visiting it, the memories still too painful, but now she felt an inexplicable urgency. "I need to go there," she decided, standing up. "Now." Sarah seemed to hesitate. "Emily, there's one more thing you need to know." Her tone was grave. "Nathan has shown interest not just in the ark, but in your house too. He tried to buy it from the estate 3 times in the last few months, offered absurd amounts. Why? No one knows for sure. He claims he wants to preserve the historical heritage, that the house has architectural value. But his father, the mayor, has started an expropriation process, claiming that the property is abandoned and represents a risk to the town's historical heritage. Emily felt her blood boil in her veins. They can't do that. They can if no one contests it. And since you were away... Emily didn't wait for the end of the sentence. She grabbed her bag and left determinedly. Take me there, Sarah, now. The Parker House was in the oldest part of Golden Valley, a two-story colonial building with a faded blue facade and windows of worked wood. The garden, once meticulously cared for by her grandfather, was now overtaken by tall weeds. Emily felt a lump in her throat as she inserted the rusty key into the old lock. The creaking of the door echoed through the empty house, awakening memories of a happy childhood in those corridors. The smell of old books and wood still permeated the air, along with a layer of dust that spoke of years of abandonment. "The attic is this way," said Emily, guiding Sarah up a narrow staircase. The room at the top of the house was practically as Emily remembered: piles of books, restoration tools, unfinished paintings. But there was something new, or rather, something she had never noticed before. On one of the walls, partially covered by a bookshelf, there was a carved wooden panel with the same symbol they had seen in the church: the circle with the spiral and the 3 vertical lines. "Was this always here?" asked Sarah, approaching the panel. Emily touched the carvings, feeling the same sensation of warmth she had experienced when touching the ark. "I don't know. Maybe yes. But it was hidden." Upon pressing the center of the symbol, they heard a click and the bookshelf beside it moved a few inches, revealing a small secret compartment in the wall. Inside it, a dark wooden chest with bronze clasps. "This is it," whispered Emily, recognizing the chest that Sarah had mentioned. With trembling hands, she removed it from the hiding place and tried to open it, but it was locked. 3 different locks protected its contents. 3 keys, murmured Emily, remembering the annotation in the journal, the truth sealed under 3 keys. "What do you think is in there?" asked Sarah. Before Emily could answer, they heard a noise coming from downstairs, the unmistakable sound of footsteps trying to be silent. "There's someone in the house," whispered Sarah, alarmed. Emily signaled for them to remain silent and picked up the chest, hiding it inside an old travel suitcase that was in the corner of the attic. Cautiously, they approached the staircase and peeked at the lower floor. Nathan Morgan was walking slowly through the living room, examining objects with calculated interest. Next to him, a burly man that Emily recognized as one of the town's security guards. "I'm sure the old man hid it somewhere in this house," Nathan was saying. "The notes in the journal mentioned a legacy hidden at home. And if the granddaughter discovers that we entered here without authorization?" asked the guard, visibly uncomfortable. Nathan shrugged. "We'll say we were doing a routine inspection for the expropriation process. Besides, she won't stay in town for long. She's an international journalist, has more important commitments." Emily felt her face burn with anger. She signaled to Sarah, and the two silently retreated to the back of the attic. "We need to leave without them seeing us," whispered Emily. "Hand, take the chest." Sarah pointed to a small window in the roof. "Through there it leads to the backyard, but it's a considerable jump." While they evaluated the escape route, a familiar bark sounded downstairs, followed by surprised exclamations from Nathan and the guard. Emily risked another look down the stairs and saw Guardian, the German shepherd, in the living room, growling menacingly at the intruders. "Where did that dog come from?" she heard Nathan ask, taking a few steps back. Taking advantage of the distraction, Emily and Sarah quickly descended the back staircase, with Emily carrying the suitcase containing the chest. When they reached the yard, they were greeted by Father Matthew, who was waiting for them with visible relief. "Thank God you're both all right," he said. "Guardian seemed agitated this morning, kept looking in the direction of your house, so I followed him." "How did he know?" asked Sarah, perplexed. The priest had no time to answer. Guardian came running through the side corridor of the house, positioning himself beside them. From the other side of the yard, Nathan emerged from the back door, his face a mask of surprise and irritation upon seeing the group gathered. "Emily Parker," he said, quickly regaining his composure. "What a surprise to find you in your old house." "The surprise is mine, Nathan," she responded coldly. "I didn't know the mayor's office now invades private properties." "Just a routine inspection for the expropriation process," he repeated, the rehearsed excuse. his eyes fixed on the suitcase Emily was carrying. "Found something interesting amidst the dust." Before Emily could respond, a tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. It wasn't an ordinary tremor. It seemed to emanate from a specific point exactly where Guardian was standing. The German shepherd began to howl, a long and chilling sound that seemed to pierce the very fabric of time. And then, before the astonished eyes of all, the 3 locks of the chest inside the suitcase began to glow through the fabric, emitting a golden radiance that seemed to pulse in the same rhythm as the dog's howl. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The golden glow, emanating from the locks of the chest, illuminated the yard with a supernatural light, casting elongated shadows on the walls of the Parker house. Guardian's howl abruptly ceased, and a heavy silence took hold of the environment, as if time itself had paused for an instant. Nathan was the first to react, his wide eyes fixed on the suitcase Emily was holding. "What is that?" he asked. All pretense of casualness evaporated from his voice, replaced by a mixture of astonishment and covetousness. "What's in that suitcase?" Emily pressed the object against her chest, instinctively protective. "Nothing that concerns the mayor's office or your book, Nathan." Father Matthew positioned himself between them, his posture calm but firm. "I think we all need to calm down. Nathan, you're on private property without authorization. I suggest you leave before this becomes illegal." "Problem?" The town guard, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, pulled Nathan's arm. "Let's go, sir. This has gone too far." For a moment, Nathan seemed about to protest, but then adjusted his expression, regaining his usual composure. Of course, I apologize for the intrusion, Emily. But remember, this town's history belongs to all of us. Some secrets shouldn't remain buried." He cast one last look at the suitcase before leaving with the guard. As soon as they were alone, the glow from the locks diminished until it disappeared completely. Guardian approached Emily, his muzzle gently touching the suitcase. "What just happened?" asked Sarah, her voice trembling. "I don't know," answered Emily, still trying to process. "But we need to get out of here. Nathan will be back, I'm sure." "Come with me," said Father Matthew. "The parish house is the safest place right now." The small residence attached to the church was simple but welcoming. Father Matthew prepared tea while Emily and Sarah examined the chest, now placed on the kitchen table. The 3 locks, apparently common when not glowing, formed a perfect triangle on the lid of the object. "Did your grandfather mention anything about these keys?" asked the priest, serving tea in old porcelain cups. Emily leafed through Samuel Parker's journal until she found the page she was looking for. Here, she pointed to a passage written 2 months before his death. "The 3 keys represent the 3 pillars: faith, reason, and intuition. Each guardian of knowledge keeps 1 key without knowing that the others exist. The cycle is only completed when the 3 unite." Sarah leaned in to see better. "And who would these guardians be?" Emily continued reading. "The first guardian is the one who preserves faith without questioning the mystery. The second is the one who seeks truth through reason and study. The third is the one who sees beyond the visible, who feels what others merely think." "It seems your grandfather was talking about 3 different people," commented Father Matthew thoughtfully. "People who, perhaps without knowing, guard the keys to open this chest." "But who would these people be?" asked Emily, frustrated. "And where would these keys be?" The silence that followed was interrupted by the soft sound of Guardian approaching the table. The German shepherd looked fixedly at the priest, as if trying to communicate something. "I think," began Father Matthew slowly, "that your grandfather may have entrusted me with one of these keys." He rose and walked to an old oratory on the tassel. From there he removed a dark wooden crucifix. Upon turning the base of the object, a small secret drawer opened, revealing a golden key. "Samuel gave me this 6 months ago, asking me to keep it with my most sacred relics. He said one day someone would come for it when necessary." He handed the key to Emily. "I think that day has come." Emily held the key, feeling its peculiar weight. It didn't seem made of common gold. It had a more intense shine, almost iridescent. under certain light. She brought it close to one of the locks on the chest, and immediately the key began to emit that same golden glow. "It fits perfectly," she said, amazed. "But we still need 2 more. The second guardian," read Sarah from the journal. "The one who seeks truth through reason and study. Could that be Nathan? He's a historian, archaeologist." Emily frowned. "Maybe, but it doesn't make sense for my grandfather to entrust something so important to someone like him." "Not necessarily Nathan," pondered Father Matthew, "but someone connected to academic knowledge, to research." At that moment, Sarah's cell phone rang. It was a text message that made her pale. "It's from the hospital. Mrs. Eleanor Baker had a relapse. They're asking me to return immediately." "Eleanor Baker?" Emily asked, the name awakening a distant memory. "The former town librarian?" "Yes," confirmed Sarah. "She's been hospitalized for weeks. Advanced age, heart problems. But she was stable until today." A flash of intuition lit up in Emily's mind. "She and my grandfather were close, weren't they? I remember them always talking about rare books, local history." "They were very good friends," agreed Father Matthew. "Eleanor was known as the Aiki, guardian of knowledge in Golden Valley. She kept records of everything: births, marriages, historical events. If there was someone who sought truth through reason and study, it was her." Emily stood up decisively. "We need to go to the hospital now." Mercy Hospital was a modest building on the outskirts of town. Upon arrival, they were informed that Eleanor's condition had stabilized again, but that visits were restricted to family members only. "She has no family," explained Sarah to the doctor on duty. "I'm responsible for her care, and Emily here is—" She hesitated. "I'm Samuel Parker's granddaughter," completed Emily. "An old friend of Mrs. Baker. She asked to see me as soon as she knew of my arrival in town." The doctor, apparently convinced or simply too busy to argue, allowed the visit. Eleanor Baker was in a private room, a frail lady with white hair and surprisingly lively eyes for someone in her condition. When she saw Emily, a smile lit up her wrinkled face. "Emily Parker," she said, her voice low but firm. "Finally, you've returned." "Mrs. Baker," Emily approached the bed, holding the elderly woman's hand. "How are you?" "Dying, my dear," responded Eleanor with disconcerting frankness. "But waiting for you. Your grandfather said you would come when it was time." Emily felt a shiver. "You knew? About the chest? About the keys?" Eleanor nodded slowly. "Samuel and I shared many secrets. This town's history is deeper than people imagine. What is sealed needs to remain so." "What secret is that, Mrs. Baker? What is sealed?" The elderly woman looked around, as if checking if they were really alone, and then gestured for Emily to come closer. "In my house, there's an old music box on the mantelpiece. The second key is hidden inside it. Take it before Nathan finds it. He has been searching, investigating. The young man knows more than he should." "How did he discover all this?" Eleanor's face darkened. "Some knowledge is passed down through generations, even when we try to bury it. The Morgan family has always known fragments of the truth. They are descendants of those who once tried to awaken what sleeps." A medical monitor beside the bed began to emit faster beeps, indicating a change in vital signs. Eleanor squeezed Emily's hand with surprising strength. "Go now. And remember, the third key is with the one who sees beyond the visible, the one born with the gift of true sight." At that instant, Sarah entered the room hurriedly. "Emily, Nathan is here at the hospital. He's asking about Eleanor, saying he's her grandnephew." Eleanor emitted a sound that seemed a mixture of laughter and indignation. "Liar, I never had family. Go, Emily. Find the second key. The third will reveal itself when the stars align. That's how it's always been. That's how it must be." Emily and Sarah prepared to leave. Sounds of argument echoed in the corridor. Nathan's voice was clearly audible, demanding to see Eleanor Baker. And then, to everyone's astonishment, the sound of furious barking pierced the hospital. Guardian had somehow entered the building and was blocking Nathan's passage, his teeth bared, growling menacingly. The confusion in the hospital corridor offered Emily and Sarah the perfect distraction to escape through an emergency exit. While the security team tried to contain Guardian, without much success as the German Shepherd dodged with impressive agility, the two women ran to the parking lot. "How did he get in here?" asked Sarah, breathless, as she unlocked the car. "And how did he know Nathan would be here?" Emily shook her head, equally confused. "I don't know, but I'm starting to believe this dog is truly special. We need to go to Mrs. Baker's house before Nathan realizes where we're heading." Eleanor Baker's small residence was on a quiet street near the town library. It was a more modest colonial-style house than the Parkers, but equally charming, with a yellow facade and white windows framed by flowering vines. The door was locked, but Emily found a spare key hidden under a pot of begonias on the porch, exactly where Eleanor used to leave it years ago. The interior of the house was a testament to Eleanor's passion for books and history. Shelves filled practically every available wall, housing volumes ranging from classics of world literature to ancient tomes on local history. Photographs in silver frames showed Eleanor at different stages of life, many of them alongside Samuel Parker. The fireplace, Emily remembered, heading to the main room. On the dark wooden mantelpiece of the fireplace, they found the music box mentioned by Eleanor, a delicate wooden object with mother-of-pearl inlays forming floral motifs. Emily picked it up carefully and turned the small key on the side. A soft, melancholy melody filled the environment as a miniature ballerina slowly spun. "I don't see any key," commented Sarah, observing the mechanism. Emily examined the box more carefully, noticing that the bottom seemed slightly thicker than necessary. Pressing the edges in a specific sequence, as her grandfather had taught her to do with antique objects that hid secret compartments, she managed to reveal a false bottom. There, nestled in faded velvet, was a golden key identical to the one Father Matthew had given them. "We found it," said Emily, feeling the same peculiar weight, the same iridescent glow under the light. "The second key." Sarah smiled, relieved, but her expression soon changed to concern. "We need to get out of here. Nathan has probably noticed our escape by now." As they turned to the door, however, they encountered an unexpected figure. A middle-aged woman with grey hair and a severe look blocked the exit. "Who are you and what are you doing in my friend's house?" she asked firmly, holding a cell phone as if ready to call the police. "I'm Emily Parker," Emily quickly responded. "Samuel Parker's granddaughter. I just visited Mrs. Baker at the hospital, and she asked me to come get something." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Emily Parker, the journalist? Eleanor has talked a lot about you." She put away her cell phone. "I'm Martha Johnson. I've been taking care of Eleanor's house since she was hospitalized." Sarah, who worked at the hospital, recognized the name. "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Eleanor has mentioned you several times." Martha nodded, now more relaxed, but still observing the music box in Emily's hands. "What exactly did Eleanor ask you to retrieve?" Before Emily could elaborate a response, the sound of a car abruptly parking in front of the house interrupted the conversation. Through the window, they saw Nathan Morgan hurriedly getting out, his face a mask of determination. "It's the mayor's son," said Martha, frowning. "He's been showing up around here in recent weeks, asking questions about Eleanor and Samuel, scouring the town library." Emily quickly stored the key in her pocket and returned the music box to its place. "We have to go, Mrs. Johnson. Please don't tell Nathan we were here or what we came to get. It's very important." Something in Emily's tone must have convinced the woman, as she nodded discreetly. "The back door, through the kitchen. It leads to the alley that goes to the square." The two thanked her and followed the indicated direction. As they crossed the kitchen, Emily noticed a local newspaper open on the table. The headline caught her attention. "Rare astronomical phenomenon. Planetary alignment visible tonight in Golden Valley." "The stars will align," she murmured, remembering Eleanor's words at the hospital. "What?" asked Sarah, already opening the back door. "We need to find Father Matthew," Emily answered. "I think I know when the third key will reveal itself." They managed to escape through the back moments before they heard Nathan knocking at the front door. The alley led them to the central square, from where they could see the Church of the Divine Revelation. As they approached the temple, Emily noticed that something was different. A small group of people had gathered in front of the entrance, observing something with expressions of astonishment. Upon getting closer, they saw the reason for the commotion. The cracks in the marble floor around the ark, which had been isolated the night before, now emitted a faint bluish glow. The symbol, the circle with the spiral and the 3 vertical lines, seemed to pulse as if it were alive. Father Matthew was trying to calm the faithful, explaining that it was just an effect of the light on the damaged marble, but it was evident that even he didn't believe it. When he saw Emily and Sarah, the relief on his face was palpable. "Thank God you're both safe," he said, moving away from the group to speak with them privately. Guardian appeared at the hospital and then came. "Back here, agitated. I thought something serious had happened." "We found the second key," whispered Emily, discreetly showing the object, "and I believe I know when the third will reveal itself. There's a planetary alignment tonight." The priest nodded thoughtfully. That would explain the intensification of the phenomenon. The marks on the floor started to glow at dawn and have been getting brighter every hour. "But we still don't know where the third key is or who guards it," reminded Sarah. "The one who sees beyond the visible, who was born with the gift of true sight," recited Emily, recalling the words from the journal. Who in Golden Valley could that person be? The answer came in the most unexpected way. Among the crowd gathering in the church, a boy of approximately 10 years with very light hair and intense blue eyes made his way through. He walked with the confidence of someone who knows exactly where he's going, directly to where Emily, Sarah and the priest were talking. "You're Emily Parker," he said, not as a question but as a statement. "The old man from the mountain said you would come to get what he kept." Emily exchanged confused looks with Sarah and Father Matthew. "Who are you? And who is the old man from the mountain?" "I'm Michael," the boy responded simply. "The old man from the mountain speaks to me in dreams. He showed me where the third key is." Father Matthew leaned down to speak with the boy. "Michael is special," he explained in a low voice to Emily. "He sees things that others don't see. Talks about people and places he's never known. Some in town think it's just a child's imagination, others believe he has the gift," completed Sarah. "He predicted the storm that almost destroyed the dam last year, days before any meteorological sign." The boy ignored the comments about himself, his clear eyes fixed on Emily. "The dog knows too," he said, pointing to Guardian, who had approached and was now sniffing the boy's hand with curiosity, not with the caution he normally showed with strangers. "He showed you the way here, didn't he? But only you can take the key. It has to be when the moon passes between the planets." "The alignment," murmured Emily. "Where is this key, Michael?" The boy smiled, a surprisingly wise smile for his age. "In the place where everything began, where the truth was sealed for the first time." At that moment, Guardian emitted a sharp bark and ran to the entrance of the church. Nathan Morgan had arrived, his face flushed with irritation, his eyes scanning the crowd until they located Emily. "We need to get out of here," whispered Emily to the others. Michael took her hand. "Come with me. I know a way." The boy led them through a side door of the church, through the sacristy and down a narrow corridor that Emily had never noticed before. The path led to a spiral staircase that descended to what appeared to be a crypt or basement below the church. "Few know of this place," explained Father Matthew as they descended. "It's one of the oldest parts of the temple, predating the town of Golden Valley itself." The environment was damp and cold, illuminated only by the flashlight from Sarah's cell phone. The stone walls were covered with ancient symbols, some recognizable as primitive Christian, others completely strange. And there, in the center of the crypt, was a carved circular stone, an exact replica of the symbol that appeared on the church floor, in Samuel Parker's journal, and in the family home. Michael pointed to the stone. "It's here. When the moon passes between the planets, the third key will appear." Emily checked her watch. It was only a few hours until nightfall and the beginning of the astronomical alignment. The muffled sounds coming from upstairs indicated that the agitation continued in the church. Nathan would certainly be looking for them. "What do we do now?" asked Sarah. Before anyone could answer, a tremor stronger than all the previous ones shook the structure, causing dust and small fragments of stone to fall from the ceiling. Guardian began to howl, a chilling sound that echoed through the ancient walls of the crypt. And then at the exact center of the circular stone, a fissure began to form, emitting the same bluish glow they had seen on the church floor. The fissure increased, drew an intricate pattern, and finally revealed a small hidden compartment. Inside it, there was not a key, but a rolled parchment, sealed with red wax that bore the same spiral symbol. The parchment seemed to pulse with its own energy as Emily removed it from the compartment in the stone. The wax of the seal gleamed in the weak light of the flashlight, the red so vivid it seemed to have been applied moments before, not centuries ago, as the appearance of the parchment itself suggested. "Careful," warned Father Matthew. His voice, a mixture of fear and reverence. "Documents this old can disintegrate at the touch." But the parchment did not fall apart. On the contrary, it seemed firm and resilient in Emily's hands, as if it had been preserved by forces beyond human comprehension. She hesitated before breaking the seal. "Are you sure we should open it?" asked Sarah, nervously observing the entrance to the crypt. "Nathan could find this place at any moment." Michael, the blue-eyed boy who had guided them there, shook his head. "You need to read what's written. Only then will you find the third key." Emily took a deep breath and carefully broke the wax seal. The parchment unrolled in her hands, revealing elegant writing in sepia ink, part in Latin, part in a language she didn't immediately recognize. But the most surprising thing was that the more she looked at the unknown words, the more they seemed to make sense, as if the parchment itself was translating its contents for her. "To the guardian of the third generation," Emily began to read aloud. "If you are reading these words, it is because the cycle is renewed, and what was sealed threatens to awaken. The three keys must be united before the stars fully align and the door between worlds opens." Emily paused, her mind trying to process the meaning of those words. Guardian, the German shepherd, approached and touched the parchment with his muzzle, as if recognizing something there. "The first key represents faith and is kept by the servant of the divine," she continued. "The second represents knowledge and is kept by the guardian of words. The third—" Her voice faltered as she read the next line. She looked at the others, incredulous. "What does it say?" asked Father Matthew anxiously. "The third key is not an object, but an act. The blood of the chosen one from the lineage of guardians must touch the central seal when the stars align, thus completing the pact that keeps the truth protected." Sarah frowned. "Blood, that sounds like—" "A ritual," completed the priest, his expression grave. "The third key is a blood ritual." Emily continued to read, discovering more details about what was sealed beneath the church. According to the parchment, the founders of Golden Valley had not chosen that location by chance. The region was a convergence point of ancient energies, a portal between dimensions that, if fully opened, would allow beings from another plane of existence to enter our world. "This is madness," said Sarah, shaking her head. "Dimensional portals? Beings from another plane? It sounds like science, fiction, or some type of religious metaphor," suggested the priest, although his voice betrayed doubt. "Perhaps it represents dangerous knowledge that needed to be protected." Michael, who had been silent, spoke again. "It's not a metaphor. The old man from the mountain showed me in dreams. There's something asleep beneath the church, something that has been breathing slowly for centuries, waiting, and it's beginning to wake up." Emily flipped through the parchment to the end, where she found a detailed diagram. The church, the crypt, and below this, an even deeper chamber, marked with the spiral symbol. 3 specific points formed a perfect triangle around this chamber, each marked with a different symbol: a cross, an open book, and a drop. "The 3 guardians," murmured Emily. "Faith, knowledge, and—" "Blood," completed Father Matthew. "Or perhaps sacrifice." A new tremor, stronger than the previous ones, shook the crypt. Dust and small stones fell from the ceiling, and they all heard a distant sound, like a long sigh emerging from the depths of the earth. "It's happening," said Michael, his blue eyes wide. "What sleeps is awakening." Guardian began to bark frantically, running in circles around the central stone, as if trying to alert them about something urgent. Emily checked her watch. The planetary alignment would begin in less than an hour. We need to find an entrance to this deeper chamber, she decided. If that's where the main seal is, that's where we need to be when the alignment happens. Sarah looked at her, shocked. You're not really considering performing a blood ritual, are you? Emily hesitated. I don't know what to think, Sarah, but I know my grandfather believed in this enough to dedicate his last days to ensuring I would return at the right time. And considering everything we've seen, the tremors, the lights, this dog that seems to understand everything we say, I think we at least need to investigate. Father Matthew nodded slowly. I agree. We don't need to believe everything that's written, but we need to understand what's causing these phenomena. He approached the central stone. There must be a way to access deeper levels from here. As they examined the crypt in search of hidden passages, they heard footsteps approaching the entrance. Guardian immediately positioned himself defensively, growling low. Emily? Are you down there? Nathan's voice echoed down the spiral staircase. We need to talk. I'm not your enemy. Emily signaled for everyone to remain silent, quickly storing the parchment in her bag. Michael, however, seemed calm, almost as if he had been expecting this. He needs to be here, said the boy in a low voice. He's part of this. Before Emily could question what Michael meant, Nathan appeared at the entrance to the crypt, his silhouette cut against the faint light coming from the staircase. His face, normally composed and confident, showed an expression that Emily couldn't completely decipher, a mixture of urgency, fear, and something else, something almost reverent. Emily, he said, advancing cautiously while Guardian maintained a defensive posture. I know you don't trust me, and with good reason, but you need to listen to me. What's happening is bigger than any of us. How did you find us? Asked Father Matthew, instinctively positioning himself between Nathan and the group. I've always known about this crypt, Nathan replied. My family has a history with this place, a history I tried to deny for a long time. He looked directly at Emily. Just as you're trying to deny now. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. What do you know about all this, Nathan? I know your grandfather wasn't just an art restorer. I know the Ark doesn't just hold historical documents, and I know that if we don't complete the ritual before the alignment ends, something terrible will happen. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the parchment Emily was trying to hide. I need that text. I'm the only one who can fully interpret it. Guardian surprisingly backed off a bit, his growl diminishing in intensity, as if he were assessing Nathan's sincerity. Why should we trust you? Questioned Sarah. You broke into Emily's house, tried to pass yourself off as Eleanor's relative. I did what needed to be done, Nathan interrupted. Just as your family has done for generations, Emily. The Parkers have always been the guardians of the seal, while the Morgans were the guardians of knowledge. About what is sealed, one doesn't function without the other. Michael stepped forward to everyone's surprise. He's telling the truth, the boy declared, with the unwavering conviction of a child. The old man from the mountain showed me. There are 3 families, 3 lineages, those who protect with faith, those who protect with knowledge, and those who protect with blood. Emily and Nathan exchanged glances, a silent understanding forming between them. At that moment, another tremor, more violent than all the previous ones, shook the crypt. A crack appeared in the floor, exactly in the center of the circular stone, revealing a deep darkness below. It's the entrance, said Nathan, quickly approaching. The seal chamber is opening. The alignment has begun. Emily checked her watch. There were still 20 minutes until the predicted time. It's happening faster than it should, she murmured. That's because the seal is already weakened, explained Nathan. Your grandfather knew this. That's why he left the clues, why he prepared everything for your return. He was the last blood guardian. Now you are. Emily felt the weight of these words. She looked at the parchment in her hands, at the 2 keys she carried, and then at the crack that was slowly expanding, revealing an ancient staircase that descended into darkness. What exactly do we need to do? She asked, making a decision. Nathan seemed relieved by the question. The ritual is simple but precise. The two physical keys must be placed in specific locks in the seal chamber, while the third key, the blood of a Parker, must touch the central point of the seal when the planets are perfectly aligned. "And if we don't do this?" asked Sarah, still skeptical. Nathan's gaze darkened. "Then what is sealed will fully awaken, and the world as we know it will change forever, not always for the better." Guardian emitted a high-pitched whine, approaching the crack and looking down as if he sensed something moving in the depths. "We no longer have time to debate," decided Emily. "Let's go down." The ancient staircase descended in a tight spiral, each step of stone worn by time, covered by a thin layer of dust that seemed not to have been disturbed for centuries. Emily led the group, followed closely by Guardian, whose eyes strangely glowed in the darkness, as if they possessed their own light. Nathan came right behind, his tense face illuminated by his cell phone's flashlight, while Father Matthew, Sarah, and Michael closed the procession. The air became denser and colder as they descended, carrying an ancient odor that reminded Emily of damp earth, parchment, and something else. Something indefinable that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. The light from the flashlights revealed inscriptions on the walls, symbols some recognizable as ancient hieroglyphs or runes, others completely alien, forms that seemed to move at the edge of vision when not directly observed. "These markings," whispered Nathan, touching one of the walls, "they're records of the first time the portal was sealed. They say that beings from another plane of existence tried to cross into our world, bringing knowledge that humanity wasn't prepared to understand." "What kind of knowledge?" asked Emily, unable to contain her journalistic curiosity even in these circumstances. Nathan hesitated. "The kind that can both transcend and destroy a civilization. Truths about the nature of reality, time, consciousness. Imagine discovering that everything we believe to be real is just a tiny fraction of what actually exists." Sarah emitted a skeptical sound. "This sounds like it's taken from a science fiction movie. Many truths seem like madness until they're proven," observed Father Matthew. "History is full of knowledge that was initially rejected for seeming absurd." The staircase finally ended in a small circular chamber. Unlike the crypt above, this space was meticulously constructed, with perfectly smooth walls of a stone that no one could identify, black as obsidian, but with bluish reflections that danced under the light, as if the stone itself were alive. In the exact center of the chamber, there was a circular stone altar where the familiar spiral symbol was carved in high relief. Around the altar, 3 pedestals formed a perfect triangle, each marked with one of the symbols mentioned in the parchment: the cross, the open book, and the drop. "The 3 keys," murmured Emily. Nathan approached one of the pedestals, the one bearing the book symbol. "This represents knowledge. The key you found with Eleanor should be placed here." Father Matthew did the same with the pedestal marked by the cross. "And here is where we place the first key, that of faith." Emily made her way to the 3rd pedestal, the one with the drop. There was no lock there, just a small depression in the shape of the symbol. "The blood of the Guardian," she said, finally understanding. "The 3rd key is not an object, it's a sacrifice." A new tremor, more violent than all the previous ones, shook the chamber. Grains of dust and small fragments of stone fell from the ceiling, and a deep chilling sound, like the awakening of something immense and ancient, reverberated through the walls. "It's happening," said Michael, his blue eyes wide. "The portal is beginning to open." Nathan anxiously looked at his watch. "The complete alignment will occur in less than 5 minutes. We need to act now." Emily removed the 2 golden keys and handed them to Nathan and Father Matthew. Meanwhile, Guardian positioned himself beside the central altar, his eyes fixed on the shadows that seemed to thicken in the corners of the chamber, as if something were trying to materialize there. "How exactly do we do this?" asked Emily, a hint of fear in her voice. How much blood is needed?" "Just a few drops," replied Nathan, inserting the key of knowledge into its pedestal. The key fit perfectly, and immediately a golden glow spread through the lines of the pedestal, connecting it to the central altar. The ritual doesn't require a complete sacrifice, just a symbolic offering to renew the pact. Father Matthew did the same with the key of faith, producing the identical effect. Now, two pulsating golden lines connected two vertices of the triangle to the center. "Emily," called Nathan, extending to her a small silver dagger that he had taken from his pocket. The object looked ancient, with inscriptions along the blade. "This belonged to your family for generations. Samuel left it with me before he passed, saying that one day I would know when to return it." Emily took the dagger, feeling its unsettling weight in her hands. For a moment she hesitated, all the doubts returning. What if all of this was just an elaborate manipulation by Nathan? What if there was no portal at all, just a scheme to obtain? What, exactly? As if sensing her doubts, Guardian approached her, his deep and intelligent eyes fixed on hers. And in that moment something extraordinary happened. Emily had a vision, quick, almost like a flash, but intensely vivid. She saw her grandfather, younger, performing the same ritual. She saw generations of Parkers before him, each completing their own cycle. And she understood with crystal clarity that this wasn't about preventing something terrible from happening. It was about protecting a truth too profound to be prematurely understood. "It's not an evil that we are sealing," she said, the words coming from her mouth almost involuntarily. "It's knowledge, a truth so fundamental that it would change everything." Nathan nodded, surprised by her sudden understanding. "Exactly. The beings from the other side aren't monsters or demons. They're different consciousnesses, entities that exist in dimensions we can't fully comprehend. They tried to share their knowledge with us once, but we weren't ready. The result was chaos, misinterpretations, distortions. The seal isn't to keep them away, but to control how that knowledge reaches us gradually, in doses we can assimilate." A new tremor, even stronger, shook the chamber. The central altar began to emit an intense bluish glow, and in the air above it, a kind of distortion began to form, as if the very fabric of reality were folding. "It's now," said Michael, his voice strangely calm. "The stars are aligned." Emily approached the third pedestal. With a quick and decisive movement, she made a small cut on the palm of her hand with the dagger. A few drops of blood fell into the depression of the drop symbol, and immediately the third golden line formed, completing the triangle that connected the pedestals to the central altar. An intense light erupted from the center of the altar, rising in a vertical beam that seemed to reach infinity. The distortion in the air intensified, and for a brief, surprising moment, Emily had the impression of seeing something on the other side. Forms, colors, dimensions that her brain could barely process. And then a voice, not physical, but somehow present directly in her mind like a thought that wasn't hers. An ancient voice, multiple like thousands speaking in perfect harmony. "The cycle is renewed. The time has not yet come. We will continue to wait, continue to observe. The knowledge will be preserved until humanity is ready to receive it completely." The beam of light began to diminish, the distortion to close. Emily felt a wave of emotions not entirely her own, a mixture of infinite patience, benevolent curiosity, and something like hope. And then, as quickly as it had begun, it all ended. The glow disappeared, the golden lines faded, and the chamber was once again illuminated only by the flashlights. For a moment, no one spoke, all processing what they had just witnessed. It was Sarah who broke the silence. What exactly happened?" Emily looked at her hand. The cut had disappeared without leaving even a scar. "We renewed the pact," she answered. "The seal was strengthened, the portal closed. The knowledge remains protected until we are ready." Father Matthew was pale, but his eyes shone with a new understanding. "Throughout my life, I've sought connections between faith and science, between the mystical and the rational. I never imagined the answer could be so vast." Nathan removed the keys from the pedestals, returning them to Emily. "Each cycle lasts approximately 1 generation. When the next alignment comes, we'll probably all be gone. It will be the responsibility of the next guardians to renew the seal. Or decide that it's time to open it completely," added Emily thoughtfully. Michael, who had been silent, smiled. The old man from the mountain says the time will come, but not in our era. We still have much to learn. Guardian approached Emily, gently rubbing his muzzle against her hand. For an instant she had the impression that the animal's eyes contained infinite knowledge, a wisdom that transcended species and worlds. "And what about him?" she asked, stroking the German shepherd's head. "What's his role in all this?" Nathan smiled. "Some questions don't have simple answers. Perhaps he's a messenger, perhaps a guardian of another type. What matters is that, when necessary, he appeared." Slowly, the group began to climb the spiral staircase back to the crypt. Emily was the last, pausing for a moment to look back at the chamber that now seemed like just an old and empty room, with no indication of the extraordinary events that had occurred there. Weeks later, Golden Valley had returned to its quiet routine. The tremors had completely ceased. The cracks in the church floor had been repaired, and gradually people began to forget the strange events, attributing them to natural phenomena or coincidences. Emily decided to remain in town, at least temporarily. She moved back into the family home, started renovating the property, and began cataloging the vast collection of books and artifacts left by her grandfather. Nathan, surprisingly, became a valuable ally in this task, his knowledge of history and archaeology perfectly complementing Emily's journalistic perspective. During a particularly pleasant afternoon, while they worked together in the attic, Emily found an additional secret compartment hidden behind another bookshelf. Inside it there was an older journal written by her great-grandfather detailing his own experience with the seal ritual. "Each generation records its part of the history," commented Nathan, carefully leafing through the yellowed pages, "preserving the knowledge for the next guardians." Emily nodded, thoughtful. "Do you think the day will come when we no longer need the seal? When humanity will be ready for the complete knowledge?" Nathan reflected for a moment. "I think that day will come when we learn to use knowledge for unity, not division. When truth is valued above power." Emily smiled, looking out the window, where Guardian was placidly resting in the now well-maintained garden, his eyes alert, always vigilant. "Meanwhile," she said, "we continue to keep secrets and wait, like guardians of a truth not yet revealed." On the horizon, the sun was beginning to set over the mountains of Golden Valley, tinting the sky with golden and purple hues. Somewhere distant, beyond the stars that were beginning to appear, other worlds, other dimensions, continued their parallel existence. And in the midst of it all, a small group of ordinary people carried the extraordinary knowledge that the universe was much larger, much more complex, and much more wonderful than anyone could imagine. The sealed truth patiently awaited the right moment to be revealed.